The Dark World and Lightsworn series of cards depict two armies, one naturally of darkness and the other of light. While these two were initially released separate from one another, their card arts over time told a story of the Dark Army corrupting the Light. Additionally, each series depicts their own stories, but opinions have differed as to exactly how these stories go. We did have a couple of official takes on the cards back in Yu-Gi-Oh's Master Guides 2 and 3, but some things do appear to have changed in their lore since then. So I decided to analyze the cards based on their Japanese names, and I believe I have come up with a coherent story that still fits with most of the Master Guide lore. As a brief summary, we have a few stories. The first details Braun and his collaboration with Rain to invade the world beyond Dark World. The second details Minerva's ascension to the Lightsworn ranks. The third sees the Dark World's corruption of the Lightsworn. And the fourth continues the first as Rain battles it out with Grapha for who truly rules Dark World. Additionally, there is kind of a little preamble section that might occur before the Dark World live in a more or less peaceful society, but we'll get to that. That's more of a theoretical section. So beginning with Dark World cards, our first story begins with the card Braun, Mad King of Dark World, except at this point in the story he potentially is not actually such a king yet. He aspires to rule the Dark World and invade the lands beyond their gates, the lands on the other side of the portal, the gateway to Dark World. To achieve this, he seeks out an evil creature he's heard legend about, Rain, Dark World Devil. Rain has desired to wrest control of Dark World from its current leadership, the gods of Dark World, but was not yet strong enough. But then comes Braun, who has brought with him a great power, something that when offered to Rain would give him the strength to take over Dark World, and in return, Rain would declare Braun the Mad King of Dark World, while Rain ruled from the shadows. This is seen in Dark World dealings, as Rain receives a mysterious card, perhaps superpolymerization, perhaps the card Soul of Braun, or some other power. We may never know. What we can infer is this card gave Rain his power upgrade, as several features, including his horns and his abs, look younger or less refined in dealings than in his Devil card. With this, Rain ascends to level 7, showing he has the power to now rule over essentially all the Dark World gods. For before, these 4 or 5 gods ruled the realm, but now Braun will command them under the secrecy of Rain's leadership. I should note that similar to the Dark World Master Guide lore, the inhabitants of Dark World likely are not bad guys, but just look scary and live in their own peaceful society, isolated from everywhere around them. This is evidenced by the flavor texts of Renge and Zur, who are known throughout the land in positive lights. Renge is known for his strength, and Zur never oppresses the populace. But now Braun is in command, so that is beginning to change. So in this Dark Army, we see the following. Genta, Gatekeeper of Dark World, is just that, the one manning the gates. I should note here that in English, Renge is called the Gatekeeper, but this is a mistranslation, as he is actually a sentry or guard, likely one who is stationed at the gates, but Genta is the actual gatekeeper in the original Japanese. Scar, Scout of Dark World, and Brow, Huntsman of Dark World. Together, these two especially defend against anyone who would try to enter Dark World by any means other than the gates. Renge, Sentry of Dark World, patrols the area near the gates, keeping law and order and defending the gates in case of attack. Zur, Knight of Dark World, is exactly that, a knight in the army. He at some point becomes Braun's most trusted warrior/advisor. Beige, Vanguard of Dark World, leads the general troops of the army under the direct command of Silva. Meanwhile, Khaki, Assassin of Dark World, handles Black Ops essentially, silently killing anyone he needs to. He is also one of the 4 military elite alongside Silva, Beige, and Gren. Snow, Magician of Dark World, uses magic to fight for the army. Gren, Tactician of Dark World, through the use of his Dark World archives, including the tome Dark World Grimoire, aka Books of Dark World in Japanese, studies the best strategies to defeat any opponent and reports these to the commander of the army to implement. This commander, Silva, Army God of Dark World, primarily commands all these forces, leading fiercely and tactfully, as seen in how he looks in the cards Dark Scheme and Sight Kill, which is known as Mokusatsu in Japanese. Still, Silva reports to Gold, Military God of Dark World, whose powers are displayed in the card Dark World Lightning. Gold in turn reports to his superior Latinum, War God of Dark World. One might translate this instead as God of Battle if you prefer. This is implied by Latinum being a level 6, while Gold and Silver are level 5, But additionally, as in metals, the rankings go silver, gold, platinum, with platinum being the highest value. Still, one more god might stand above latinum, and I'm not talking about Grapha. Lucent, aka Celt in the original Japanese, Kishin of Dark World, theoretically might have been the true ruler of Dark World before Rain stepped in. The English version translates Kishin as Netherlord, which would fit translating the pronunciation Onigami, god of ghosts, instead of Kishin, but Kishin is mostly translated as either fierce god, demon god, or evil spirit god. The latter two might fit most if you consider all Dark World monsters to be evil spirits or kind of like demon things in the sense of kind of like King of Yami-Makai. I mean, demons in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are archfiends for us, but there's some sort of overlap in the earliest stages, so maybe? But Netherlord might work given the translucent appearance of Celt, but we haven't yet seen any evidence of ghosts or the dead rising in Dark World cards. If anything, we see the opposite, reincarnation occurring in 1-for-1. If anything, the fact that translucent seems slightly similar to clear, meanwhile the original one thought to rule Dark World was colorless, a callback to that might, with having Celt rule Dark World, makes logical sense, but I admit ranking him is tough. In any case, Rain becomes more powerful than all these gods, taking command and granting control of the army to Braun. This would also mean Braun rules over Ceruli, Guru of Dark World, Paul, Hermit of Dark World, and Cobalt, Excavator of Dark World. But how they fit into the society may more so be citizens than army members. Anyway, with the army under Braun's command, he proudly stands in front of the army, exiting the gates of Dark World first as his army falls in line. As an extended footnote here, it is rather tough to tell what is happening in this card. Are the gates opening or closing? Why is Braun alone? Is he going into or out of the gates? That last question we can answer, though. The gates are implied to be looking at Dark World from the outside, as the lightning world they live in lies beyond the gates. Also, extremely close examination of Braun shows his sleeves match his card art, and his chains are in the background, not the foreground, just like his card. So he is exiting the gates. If the gates are opening, then likely his army is in formation leaving behind him. If the gates are closing, maybe he was exiled at some point. Again, it's tough to say. I don't think he would be exiled, especially when this was released so far back when he was definitely king in all the card arts, so I don't know. It's tough to say, and what is also curious here is that there are 5 loose chains in the gates artwork, but only 4 in bronze art. Perhaps his chains are breaking as he begins his campaign, which aligns with him completely unchained in the next card art. In the anime, he also broke his chains, so maybe. Anyway, Braun leads the army through the gateway, a spherical portal amidst ancient ruins shrouded in darkness, to invade the world of darkness beyond. This is seen in the cards Charge into a Dark World and the Forces of Darkness. Now some might be saying, but the card says Charge into, not Charge out from. To that we look at the Japanese, which instead calls this card Dark World Reinforcements. Similarly, the other is called Military Forces from the Darkness. Both depict the Dark World army emerging from the gateway, not charging into it as if invading Dark World itself. Hence, we see Braun and Reinforcements commanding Zur, and we can imply also along with Scar and Brow and forces, as he invades the lands beyond Dark World. These lands of darkness are possibly those under the command of King of Yami-Makai, literally translated as Supreme King of the Dark Demon World, or less likely, perhaps they are the lands of the Archfiends under the command of Terror King Archfiend. In any case, under Braun's reign, his army grows and the people are oppressed. Braun is corrupt and, well, mad. Zur recognizes this, and as his flavor text reads, he doesn't oppress the people, but even he has to make a dark deal once in a while in the interest of Braun. Zur does this on one occasion with Coffin Seller, but the details of the deal are unclear. Depictions of Braun's invasion might be seen in Thousand Buster, as Scar and Kaki attack, and in Darkness Half, as Kaki creeps around. But these might also depict actions during the occupation or even attacks or operations in the Lightsworn War. Similarly, the event depicted in 1-for-1 shows a Scar fell in battle and was reincarnated instantly as Samsara Lotus. When this occurs is unclear, but likely by the end of the Lightsworn War. Additionally, Dark Corridor, originally known in the anime as Dark World Corridor, might depict the capture of Kaki as he appears trapped in some thin corridor in the Dark World. So maybe he got trapped in his own trap as the Lightsworn take the fight to the Dark World, but I'm not sure what's happening in this card, and even if it is during the Lightsworn assault, I am getting ahead of myself. Point is, by this point, Braun has invaded the lands beyond Dark World, Scar might have died by now, Kaki might have been captured by now, and Vayne controls Dark World from the shadows. Additionally, note, the invasion appears to have spread beyond even the Shrouded World, as the Dark World gained ground against the Empire under the command of the Tyrant. At one point, Marauding Captain and Sasuke's samurai, under the command of Freed the Brave Wanderer, sought out the true leader of the Dark World army, Rain, and attempted to defeat him as seen in Common Sacrifice. This particular case might also depict Rain stepping out of the shadows, siphoning the power of Sasuke and Captain to increase his own and assert public control over Dark World if Grapha has re-emerged. But I will cover Grapha later. In any case, these three warriors were unsuccessful and were forced to retreat. Before and while this is happening, the Lightsworns are using their forces to fight evil throughout space and time. The Lightsworns are said to have been founded by Michael, the Arc Lightsworn. It is theorized among fans that Michael was originally an angel from the Sanctuary in the sky, but left and created his own army to fight against evil. The Lightsworn, as such, are warriors gathered from across time and space, and then trained in a separate dimension known as the Realm of Light, to fight off evil across the dimensions. Specifically, it is said the gathered Lightsworn were the souls of heroes who died in the conflicts the Lightsworn fought in. As such, they grow their ranks with each battle. The journey from the realm to the battlefield is depicted in Charge of the Light Brigade, aka Reinforcement of Light. The Lightsworn use an immense amount of energy to transmit their bodies through time and space, but they are essentially immortal. If they die on the battlefield, they will reincarnate into new bodies back in the Realm of Light. This is seen as Lumina reincarnates in Glorious Illusion. The Lightsworn army consists of 4 units, along with a select group of leadership. Black Ops are handled by members such as Rinyan, Lightsworn Thief. Rinyan specifically is a familiar to Lumina and often sneaks behind enemy lines to gather intelligence, cause chaos, or steal magical treasures. Raiden, Lightsworn Assassin, might also be a Black Ops member, as he often sneaks behind military lines, stealthily killing enemy commanders. Next is the front line, the physical fighters. These include, but are not limited to, as we don't know the identities of the entire army, Gareth, Lightsworn Warrior, Wolf, Lightsworn Beast, Eren, Lightsworn Monk, and Raiko, Lightsworn Hunter, who is the familiar of the commander of the front line, Jane, Lightsworn Paladin. Jane is seen in Solar Recharge, aka Solar Exchange, possibly giving the power of the light to a land in need. Meanwhile, the front line, if needed, could employ the use of the Lightsworn Saber, aka Lightsworn Rapier. A specific note about Raiko, he often scouts ahead or combats individual enemies, though the nature of these encounters is not always clear. For example, Raiko is seen to face off against Plague Wolf in a forest as seen in Mono a Mono. On another occasion, Raiko appears to have fought Gagaga Magician in Gagaga Rush. Plague Wolf might have been one of many zombies the Lightsworn would fight in Zombie World, or a random encounter nearby a conflict for which Raiko met while scouting, but why Raiko or the Lightsworn at all would have any beef with the Gagaga Academy is beyond me. So next in the army is the rear line, comprised mostly of magic users. This includes Arcus, Lightsworn Druid, Genis, Lightsworn Priest, whose power is seen to defend the army in Lightsworn Barrier, Lila, Lightsworn Magician, Lumina, Lightsworn Summoner, possibly Minerva, Lightsworn Maiden, but definitely also Felice, Lightsworn Archer, likely the only Lightsworn we know of yet in the rear line to use physical weapons instead of magic. Some magic employed by the rear line is seen in Light Spiral, aka Light Resilience. As a footnote for Lumina, she is seen using Dark Magic Circle for her magics, so she may have had some connection to the Dark Magician series in her life before the Lightsworn. Next, the Air Force. This includes Shire, Lightsworn Spirit, Graganeth, Lightsworn Dragon, possibly the Lightsworn Dragonling, aka Dragon of Lightsworn, who will later grow up to be the most powerful force in the army, Judgment Dragon, and possibly Minerva, Lightsworn Maiden, especially likely once her wings had grown larger, as in Minerva, Lightsworn Saint. These are all led by Celestia, aka Cherubim, Lightsworn Angel. Her power is seen in Vanquishing Light, aka Light Vanish. Cherubim was the first Lightsworn released to have 3 halos around her instead of 1, as with every other Lightsworn member, thus showing her leadership role. Additional leaders include Michael the Arc Lightsworn, aka Lightsworn Arc, who rides atop Judgment Dragon as he leads the army. Minerva, the Athenian Lightsworn, aka Lightsworn Athena, after she rises again in the ranks, and Kyrios, in the English known as Curious, the Lightsworn Dominion, who actually appears to have 4 halos around him if you count the large blue halo. A previous lore posting said Michael was the founder of the Lightsworn, implying he also leads them, but given Curious has an additional halo and boasts the title Dominion, which means ruler or sovereign, and given that in Christianity the Dominion angels are higher in rank than the archangels, which are higher in rank than the regular angels, this would imply Curious actually leads the Lightsworn, with Michael as Arch and Cherubim as Angel. As the Lightsworn are fighting enemy after enemy, the Dragonling grows into Judgment Dragon, and Minerva trains to grow in the ranks of the army. We see her maiden form evolving into her saint form, growing her wings as Michael and Cherubim, again the leadership, stand behind her as seen in Lightsworn Sanctuary. Minerva is later seen potentially passing another trial of ascension, as she either calls to or learns to control Judgment Dragon, as seen in Lightsworn Judgment. She thus achieves her Athena form, joining the leadership alongside Cherubim and Michael. And now we enter the Lightsworn War with the Dark World. Seeing that Braun and Rain have invaded the lands, the Lightsworn are called to repel this threat and restore peace. The army arrives, but the Dark Worlds had a plan. Gold used the Dark Smog, aka Dark Miasma, to separate Ryko from the army. At this point, we know Grapha, dragon god of Dark World, has entered the scene. How he fits into the story is still a mystery. Did he rule Dark World instead of Lucent, aka Celt? Did Grapha exist more as a sleeping dragon who saw Rain gaining power and only then decided to join in the power struggle? Was Grapha just one of the gods and only entered the scene as needed? Or was there another explanation? The one card that may explain this initial absence is Dimension Slice. This card depicts Tiras, Keeper of Genesis, defeating and presumably sealing away, banishing, if you will, Grapha in a prior conflict. Tiras was an inhabitant of the Sanctuary in the Sky. We can infer then that at one point Grapha commanded the Dark World army, or at least was a major member in it, and the Sanctuary's angels repelled this threat, sealing away Grapha and, who knows, maybe even Rain in the process. In the interim, the Dark World rebuilt the society in a peaceful isolation, all while keeping their military strong should that peace be threatened. Returning back to just before the Lightsworn invasion, Grapha has in any case emerged on the scene, possibly at the request of Gold, who saw seeking out or unsealing Grapha as the only path to victory, and Grapha appears to have asserted his dominance over Rain, concocting this plan to turn the Lightsworn against each other. Gold was just the first step. After Ryko was isolated, he was lured into Dark World to Grapha, who brainwashed him into joining the Dark Worlds as seen in Dark World Brainwashing. Here, Grapha also gave Ryko a new dark cloak, symbolizing the new allegiance. Grapha then commanded Snow to control Ryko as seen in Dark World Puppetry, sending Ryko presumably back through the gateway out of Dark World, so that he could lure other Lightsworns into the same brainwashing. After all, if you can lure in the commander Jane, the others are sure to follow. Here's where things get a little confusing. Next in the timeline is Twilightsworn Cloth, which shows the corrupted Lightsworn members, known as the Twilightsworns. It shows that they have created an arsenal with new cloaks and weaponry, for example an orb for Luna, a staff for Lila, a dagger for Ryko, and a sword for Jane. But Ryko's cloak is also here under his new dagger. So did they make a spare cloak? Did they use Ryko's cloak as a template to make the others? If so, why didn't the Dark World give each of them their cloaks? I guess potentially the brainwashing could have transferred zombie style instead of everyone going to Grapha, hence the need to recreate the cloak from just Ryko's as a template, but this is still weird. Anyway, after all the new armaments are ready, the Twilightsworn amass their army and counterattack the rest of the uncorrupted Lightsworn army in the name of the Dark World. This is seen in March of the Dark Brigade. Here also we see leading the charge Jane, Twilightsworn General, along with Ryko, Twilightsworn Fighter, Lila, Twilightsworn Sorcerer, and Lumina, Twilightsworn Shaman. Additionally, we know there are at least 10 silhouetted Twilightsworn members behind these four. Granted, this might not be the entire Twilightsworn army, but we can analyze the shadows and discern who probably is with the Dark Brigade and who has remained uncorrupted in the Lightsworn army. Given the silhouettes, likely Cherubin, Rinyan, Graganith, and Shire aren't corrupted. However, one bulky figure in the middle appears to be Gareth. Another figure on the far left looks like Janice but with a new hat, and finally one figure on the left side appears to have beast ears. This might be either Felice or Wolf. The ears are long and pointed like Felice's, but the flat head instead of bushy hair and broad shoulders likely suggest Wolf but with his ears poked up. So I'm going to say Wolf, Janice, and Gareth are all Twilight Sworn members. Meanwhile, it is unclear the fates of Arcus, Raiden, and Eren, who might fit these silhouettes but might not. Together, they take the fight to the Realm of Light, but the battle doesn't quite make it to the city. Still, a fierce battle rages as the two armies clash. Lumina and Lila at one point combine their magics, as seen in Twilight Eraser. Meanwhile, Michael, Graganeth, Shire, Cherubim, Maybe Curious, and now a newly upgraded Minerva all hold the line with the remaining Lightsworn. Minerva especially takes to the front lines, which have lost so many to corruption, repelling magic attacks as seen in Lightsworn Aegis. The big question becomes, how does Punishment Dragon fit into the story? Initially, it would seem a corrupted Judgment Dragon, but the card Twilight Twin Dragons shows instead these are two separate dragons, possibly twins even. We see Punishment Dragon standing in a desert ruins town, the same one Judgment Dragon stands in its artwork. The mountains in the distance may then be those seen in the Realm of Light. I'd venture to guess the Twilight Swans awakened Punishment Dragon, hoping it would fight for them, and so Judgment Dragon lured it to the desert ruins to confront it. Over the course of this encounter, the two would find common ground as they then joined forces and flew back to the city. Together they soared high above the city gates where they fused to form Enlightenment Dragon. This fused form would likely fly into the heart of battle and use its power to dispel the darkness that controlled the Twilight Swans. Reunited, the Lightsworn would launch a counter-assault on the Dark World, this time ready for any tricks. The battle raged on, and the Dark World army was forced to retreat back in the Dark World. During this fight, they may have lost Scar, as mentioned before, and if the fight pressed forth in the Dark World, perhaps this is when Kaki got trapped in the Dark Corridor. As an additional note, Kaki's story may continue directly from here. After being trapped, at one point he is captured by the fusion parasites as seen in Parasite Generator. How they fit into the story is unclear, but I guess they used the Dark World conflict as a chance to capture Kaki and leech into him for their own nefarious purposes. Returning to the battle, the only thing that can be truly inferred from this likely counter-assault is Snow switch sides and joined the Lightsworn. My guess is she was injured or even killed, and so Michael offered either her or her soul a chance to redeem herself by joining the Lightsworn. However, perhaps instead she feared the consequences of facing Grapha after her puppetry magic failed to defeat the Lightsworn. Death or worse by Grapha might be enough to scare her into redemption. In any case, at the end of the battle, she joins the Lightsworn as Weiss Lightsworn Demon, known in the English as Archfiend. As another thought for this battle, perhaps Dimension Slice depicts the end of this conflict. Perhaps Michael returned to the Sanctuary in the Sky and asked for reinforcements against the Dark World, for which Tyrus stepped up. Tyrus would then defeat Grapha in the battle, banishing him back in the Dark World. This fits well, but does once again reopen the question as to where Grapha was when Rain took over with Brawn, so it is hard to say exactly where this fits in, especially since this card was released long before the concept of the Twilight Sworn in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anyway, the Lightsworn had won, but this would not be the end of their battles. More would be fought across time and space, and eventually one would devastate the Realm of Light, destroying much of the city as seen in Light of Destruction. But what this enemy is remains unclear to this day. Nonetheless, likely Enlightenment Dragon diffused, and Judgment Dragon would grow quote-unquote stronger, evolving into Judgment the Dragon of Heaven, aka Judgment Splendid Celestial Dragon. This brings us to the Power Struggle arc, the most recent story for the Dark World. My theory is that Grapha's failure to defeat the Lightsworn and subsequent retreat gave Rain the opportunity he was really looking for. Seeing this failure, and especially the defection of their top magician Snow, Rain powered himself up further and declared himself Rain, Devil King of Dark World. This theory is supported by the fact that his level now equals Grapha's, but Rain's attack has surpassed Grapha's. Rain likely then used his newly upgraded spear to strike at and punish Grapha as seen in Dark World Punishment. But Grapha despised this. He would not sit back and let Rain wrest control of Dark World from him, so Grapha also upgraded himself as seen in Dark World Accession. This upgrade made him stronger than Rain, and so Grapha declared himself Grapha, Dragon God King of Dark World. As an addendum note as well, I would say that this is also showing how the title of King is rather significant in the Dark Worlds. The only ones that have the title of king were Braun, now Rain, now Grapha, and especially now with the release of Colorless. So Rain taking over the title of king is rather significant, stripping away Braun's title, in a sense. So this is where the story ends for now, but we can infer one final chapter to it. Likely Grapha won this altercation, demoting Rain back to his devil status, but Rain wouldn't accept this, so he would find and or use the power of superpolymerization and upgrade himself beyond the power of any Dark World monster, becoming Colorless, Chaos King of Dark World, a level 12 fusion monster, proving himself the true King of Dark World. And so closes the grimoire on our tales for now. Newer cards may support or contradict these theories, but only time will tell. Additionally, there is much room for interpretation. In the case of Colorless, it is possible that he was intended to be separate from Rain and be the true King of Dark World back when he was first mentioned. It is also possible that he was meant to be Rain's final form, but the problem now is Rain upgraded himself to Devil King. But Colorless needs Devil, not Devil King, to be fusion summoned. Hence my lore explanation that Rain would have to be dethroned by Grapha to make Colorless fit into the story. Other details of the story could be interpreted differently, as well. Maybe Braun met Rain beyond the gates of the Dark World, and together they took over as Braun opened the gates to see his new army. Maybe the Twilightsworn darkness wasn't dispelled and they fell in battle permanently. Maybe Snow had to change her heart and join the Lightsworn earlier, but if she controlled the puppetry magic, would that not dispel the entire Twilightsworn control anyway? Point is, there are multiple ways to tell the story, but so far this is the most coherent explanation I've thought of. In any case, feel free to offer thoughts in the comments below, as this is a fascinating set of stories. Also, as more of an afterthought, Terror King Salmon, aka Genocide King Salmon, this card's flavor text does mention is a type of fish that is eaten in Dark World, so that's just an next bit of lore. Supposedly, Mad Lobster and Sea Serpent Warrior of Darkness also relate, but their flavor texts don't read Onkokukai, so maybe instead they relate to the world of darkness ruled by King of Yami Makai. In any case, let me know what you think, and thanks for listening.